The old fisherman stood at the riverbank, his frail hands gripping the last net he would ever cast. The villagers watched in silence, their skeptical eyes fixed on the man who had spent his entire life chasing an impossible dream. They had mocked him, called him foolish, and declared him a man lost to fantasies. Yet here he stood unwavering, with a wisdom none of them could yet comprehend. "The river always gives what you truly seek," he said, his voice calm but resolute. A murmur spread through the crowd. They had heard these words before, but they never understood their meaning. The river was just water, a source of food, and nothing more. But the old man had always claimed there was magic hidden beneath the surface. With one final throw, his net plunged into the depths. The moment stretched endlessly, every pair of eyes glued to the rippling water. And then a sudden pull, a force unlike anything he had ever felt before. As he struggled to bring the net to shore, the gasps of the villagers filled the air. When he finally pulled it up, the net was empty. No fish, no treasure, just water slipping through the gaps. Laughter erupted. "So this is your great wisdom?" An empty net, a man scoffed. But the fisherman only smiled. He turned to the crowd and said, "Tell me, what do you see?" "Nothing," they replied. "Exactly," the fisherman whispered. "And yet everything—" The story rewinds to decades earlier, where the fisherman, then a young man named Elias, first heard the legend of the river's secret. His father, also a fisherman, spoke of a hidden truth beneath the waters. But Elias was impatient, always chasing big catches, hoping for instant success. As years passed, Elias found himself struggling. The river yielded fewer fish, and he became the subject of ridicule. His brother, a wealthy merchant, often taunted him for wasting his life on illusions. "Why not leave this foolish trade and work with me?" he would ask. But Elias refused. Deep inside, he felt the river had more to offer than mere fish. He spent his days experimenting, casting nets in patterns, watching the currents, listening to the wind. Villagers laughed at his methods, calling him the mad fisherman. One fateful evening, after yet another failed attempt to uncover the river's secret, Elias sat at the shore, questioning everything. Was he truly a fool? Had his father deceived him? Just then, an old traveler appeared and sat beside him. "You look for answers in the wrong place," the traveler said. Elias frowned. "Then where should I look?" The traveler pointed at the water. "Not with your eyes, but with your heart." Elias became obsessed with the traveler's words. He watched the river not as a fisherman, but as a student. He studied its rhythms, how the fish moved, how the birds above reacted to its flow. One night, a fierce storm hit the village. While others sought shelter, Elias ran to the river, believing it would finally reveal its truth. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the churning waters. Then, for the first time, he saw it. Not fish, not treasure, but something far more valuable. He rushed to share his discovery with the villagers. "The river gives what you seek, but you must seek beyond the obvious." Again, they mocked him. "If there's no fish or gold, then what good is your so-called secret?" Elias realized he couldn't explain it. It had to be felt, experienced. But how? Determined to prove himself, Elias stopped fishing altogether. Instead, he began using the river's patterns to predict the weather, to guide farmers when to plant crops, and even to help traders navigate safely. Slowly, the village saw his wisdom. Droughts were avoided, harvests flourished, and accidents reduced. Yet, despite his growing respect, one question remained unanswered. Could the river truly grant wishes? One day, a young boy approached Elias. "I don't want fish. I just want my father to come home safe from the sea. Can the river help?" Elias had no answer until he remembered the old traveler's words, "Not with your eyes, but with your heart." He guided the boy to the river, and together they listened. The winds changed, the birds moved differently, and Elias knew the storm coming that night would be dangerous. He warned the sailors. Some listened, some didn't. Those who heeded his words returned safely. Those who ignored him never came back. Years passed. Elias grew old and his legend spread. The village no longer mocked him. They respected him as the river whisperer. On his final day, he stood by the shore, ready to cast his last net. The villagers gathered, eager to see if the river would grant him one final miracle. As his net surfaced empty, disappointment rippled through the crowd. But Elias only smiled. The river never gave me fish. It gave me wisdom. And that, my friends, is the real magic. Silence fell. Then, one by one, the villagers nodded, understanding at last. The story ends as a young boy, now a man, stands by the river, casting his own net, not for fish, but for knowledge. Moral: true wealth lies not in what we take, but in what we understand. The greatest treasures are not always visible. They must be felt, experienced, and shared.